All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth seminar of the University of Guelph's One Health Seminar Series. So my name is Daniel, and I'm a graduate student in the Department of Population Medicine enrolled in the One Health Seminar course. So just before we begin the seminar, we would like to acknowledge that the University of Guelph resides on the historical land of the Attawandaron people and the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. So this acknowledgement is meant to remind us of the importance of the land and water that sustains us and of those who have lived on and been stewards of this land for thousands of years. This is important to remember as we move forward in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and commit to learning from the past, working together, and building a better future. So I would also like to make everyone aware that the seminar is being recorded and the recording will be posted to the One Health U of G YouTube channel, and the link will be shared on the One Health Institute's website. So this link may also be used to promote One Health work being done on campus. And if you have any questions or concerns about the recording or just One Health in general, please feel free to contact us through our email at onehealth@uofguelph.ca, which I will post in the chat. At the end of the seminar, there will be time for questions and discussion. And so you will be able to ask your questions with either using the chat feature or the raise your hand feature on Zoom. And our discussion facilitator, which I believe is Marley for the session, will then call on you to unmute and ask your question. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the seminar. Chris Earley is the Interpretive Biologist and Education Coordinator at the University of Guelph's Arboretum, and he will be speaking to us about connecting to nature and why it is good for you and for the planet. Take it away, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen here. And, oops. All right, so can everybody see that okay? Awesome. So yeah, thanks everyone for having me to this. It's great to be here, and nice that that we can have so many people together as we learn about this stuff. So I have been working at the Arboretum for I'm in my 30th year right now. That's how old I am, and I love it here. So if you look at this, you can see why. It's a beautiful spot. So just to give a little bit of background, just because I don't know what everyone knows about the Arboretum. The Arboretum it's 400 acres, so 165 hectares, and that includes garden areas. It includes plant collections from all over the Northern Hemisphere. It has a few buildings, so our Arboretum Center and our Nature Center being amongst them. And it also has 3 old growth forests, so forests that have never been clear cut. So it's a beautiful spot, and it is part of the University of Guelph campus. So this is actually part of your campus, which is pretty awesome. And it's all within the city of Guelph limits. So this is part of the city of Guelph. It's often described as the green heart of Guelph. And it's a big change compared to what it used to be. So we started in 1970, and our first trees were planted in the spring of 1971. So, in 50 years, we've gone from this. So this is taken behind our Arboretum Center, and you can see these 3 maples right here. So there's the closest one. And here is the view at the exact same point that I took this photo yesterday. So you can see there's those 3 maples, and now you can't see East Residence at all. So even if we move over a little bit to the side to try and look farther, everything has changed. So it's amazing what you can do with a space in as little as 50 years to make it a much more not only usable space for humans, but a really great space for wildlife as well. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we have a wide variety of things. So like I said, we have cultivated areas. So this is our Sakura cherries when they're blooming, for example. And we have natural areas. So this is in Wild Goose Woods. Here's a view of Wild Goose Woods. This is one of our old growth forests. It's never been clear cut, so it's looked like this since there was a glacier squishing it, a few tens of thousands of years ago. So probably about 14,000 years ago. We also have Victoria Woods, which is also old growth, but does have a human-made pond in the middle of it. And we have a nature reserve, which is 100 acres. It's on the south side of Stone Road, and it's not public access. So that gives us sort of a repository for wildlife and for research purposes. So this picture is actually taken as part of a biodiversity research project using cameras. So this camera actually it's not only gotten deer, we've had coyotes, possums, we had a weasel the other day, fox, all kinds of things. It's a pretty great location for seeing lots of different wildlife. And something else that's really important too is when you look at the Arboretum, so you can see collection areas. So this over here is part of our Rosaceae collection. This area here is part of Wild Goose Woods. So this is a part of the forest that was always here. It's, like I said, never been clear cut. Due to the fact that it's wet, it wasn't going to be able to be farmed, so they just left it, which was really great for local wildlife. But everything in this whole corner here is actually a restoration site. So that restoration site starting to be planted in about 1978, 79, sort of the late 70s. It's now getting to a point where you can't tell it from the forest that has been there literally for thousands of years. So it's amazing what you can do. And that's what we try and showcase at the Arboretum is really show people, organizations, landowners, what is possible with the property and why just having a whole bunch of grass may not be the best thing for your property. So we're also doing smaller restoration projects. So this is a smaller boardwalk that we've just installed to show off some really wet species. So this is our planting of cardinal flower, which is it's really beautiful when it's blooming. And this gives you an idea of sort of the diversity of what we're doing with plants and fungi on the Arboretum. So here, this is Victoria Woods when the trilliums are blooming. We have all kinds of fungus, over 250 fungus species that we've identified in the Arboretum. We also have a rare woody plant program that includes things like tulip trees in it, where we're raising trees that are genetically from native populations in Southern Ontario, and trying to have genetically diverse gene bank of those populations. So a really great program that we've got. But we also have formal gardens, which attracts a lot of visitors to our site as well. And all of these things add up to a green space that it's just so important for the Guelph community and beyond. And green spaces, so there's been quite a few studies on the benefits of green spaces. And so just as a sort of just looking at some of them from this one paper that we've been looking at. So longevity, if you're near a green space, you have a better chance of living longer. Reduce mortality due to circulatory disease, fewer visits to a doctor, better improvements in mood and self-esteem, better recovery from surgery, improve cognitive function, reduce mental fatigue, lower crime rates. Some of the research on crime rates have shown that even a building that looks out at a tree or trees has lower crime in it than a building that doesn't look at those trees. Even if it's in the exact same location and they're just right beside each other, that one that has the tree view has lower crime rates. So just all that type of stuff, and especially stress management, it's really important. And I think we're starting to value it, but we really don't value it the same at the level that we really need to be valuing our green spaces. I went to a conference a couple years ago out west on green spaces in cities, and there's lots of things happening with that right now. And cities really valuing their green spaces. No one there at this conference, and there were I think there were like 900 people at the conference. It was a really big conference. They were from all over the world. No one said, oh, I wish my city didn't have as much green space. That was a key feature that everyone was talking about, that it only took one person on a committee in that city's history to say, you know what, we should save this little piece of land and not build buildings here. And that has made all the difference for that city from a green space standpoint. So that's an important thing, that it does only take one person to really push for something. That once it's gone, especially in a cityscape. You're not going to get it back. So keep that in mind when if you end up in a career that has to do with any type of city planning, that type of thing. And with this green space sort of understanding, a lot of different theories are coming out. So one of them is attention restoration theory. And this theory, it's an important theory from it sort of says, the natural world is cognitively restorative and both facilitates recovery from mental fatigue and offers opportunities for reflection. So with that, that's something that we've all, especially being Canadian, we're really lucky. We've all probably experienced that, where if you've been in a natural area, whether it's a field, a forest, beside a lake or a river, you can feel that restorative aspect to being in a natural space. And they're trying to really study that so that they can maybe use that in planning, especially in cityscapes. There's also the sense of place. So this is the relationship between people and green spaces, may be understood in terms of the place itself. And that's both emotionally or even your sense of identity. And that's, you go to a spot, especially if you've gone to a spot a lot in your life, it can become an important part of your identity. And that's especially important when you lose that spot. So I know that there are spots that I went to when I was a child that are now a subdivision. And it's a crushing thing when you see that happening. And no one's really looked at that in detail. So that's something that people are starting to study a little bit more. And recently, there's been more studies on the sense of awe. So that includes things like it may improve your mood, it may be good for your health. So someone did a study and they actually showed that people who were having a sense of awe, and a lot of that, most of the examples that were given were in natural areas, showed that indicators of inflammation, for example, were significantly lower in people that were having that sense of awe. Now, it's hard in studies like that because maybe the people who are looking for awe are going to have less inflammation because of a lifestyle change. But it's still interesting to know that wow factor when you're in a natural area could be good for your health, your mood. It may help you think more critically. It could decrease materialism. So your value of money could be sort of, you know what, I don't need to buy that because I'm getting a sense of worth from the awe that I'm experiencing in nature. It can make you feel smaller and more humble, which quite frankly, humans could always do with more of that. It can make you feel like you have more time. It can make you feel more generous. It can make you feel more connected. So all of these things you can get from a green space. And that's why a place like the Arboretum, being right beside a campus especially, is so important for the health of its students. And so we're constantly trying to encourage students, if you're feeling stressed out because of midterms or these crazy presentations that you have to do for this class, for anything that you happen to be having to do, it's right there. The Arboretum is there for you to go, oh, I need a de-stress, and you could go for a walk for half an hour in the Arboretum. It's right there for you. And that sense of awe doesn't have to be a grand sense. It can be as small as, like a child looking at a woolly bear caterpillar. The sense of awe is right there. And a lot of the stuff that I work on has to do with children, because I think you have a really good window with a child to make that connection. And when I have children's programs come to the Arboretum, I start every program thinking this could be the spark. Like, my program could be the spark that starts one of these kids into connecting with nature. That could be a lifelong sort of experience for them. So I take that as like a personal challenge. I never know the results, but it certainly can happen. I was actually just telling someone the other day, I used to work at the Bruce Peninsula National Park, and I did a program on sound. So one of these was kids program on sound. So whatever, fine. I was then lecturing for the nature interpretation course here at the university. And I had a student come up to me after the course and said, "Hi, my name's Kevin. I remember when you worked at the Bruce Peninsula National Park." And I thought, "Oh, wow, that's pretty cool." And he said, "I went to every one of your programs." And I thought, "Oh, that's really nice." And he said, "That's why I'm here. I'm taking nature interpretation because that summer, everything you did, I thought, I want to do this." So you don't know when that spark's going to happen. So you have to be ready to at least present the opportunity for that spark to happen. And that opportunity in the Arboretum could be maybe a wildlife experience. Maybe you see like a fly covered in pollen, or you find a baby cottontail, or those frogs sitting on that rock in a human-made pond suddenly say, "Well, why don't I have a pond like that?" And or feeding a chickadee. If you've never had a chickadee or small bird land on your hand, then you have to do it. Like that's homework. Okay, you need to go out there and feed a bird and have it land on your hand. It's an awe-inspiring experience. So everybody needs to have that happen at least once. One of the things we do at the Arboretum to try and enhance interactions like that is encourage people to have backyard gardens that are wildlife gardens. And so we have the Gosling Wildlife Gardens, which have been around since 1988. They're Canada's oldest wildlife gardens, and they are set up as backyards to show people different ways for them to engage with nature right on their own properties. And not only is that good for them, that's good for all the wildlife, especially the suburban wildlife that live in those areas. So we try and give examples for that. So it's one thing to sort of talk about things, but it's another to make it accessible for people. You always need to try and make things accessible. Another way that we make the Arboretum accessible is we now have a official side trail that links to all the trail systems in the Guelph area, and that connects right to the Arboretum. So now we have more people being able to do really long hikes that include the Arboretum. We have different interpretive signage and informational signage so people can learn about, say, the trees that are planted in the Arboretum from all over the Northern Hemisphere. And we do all kinds of different programs to connect people to nature. And these programs, it's easy to get someone to connect to nature when you're right there with them. What you really want is you want to connect them to nature when you're not with them. So one of the ways that I did that, so the Arboretum we don't have gobs of funding. So we're not a rich department, and we have very few staff. So there are certain times when I can't do as many of these types of programs as I can to get the message across to people. So during one of those times, I came up with an idea. So we'll get to that in just a second, but it had to do with trying to get people linked to biodiversity. So in the paper that the people taking the class that I gave you to read, there's a quote that says, "Those who believe that their neighborhood had a high level of greenness are more likely to have better physical and mental health than those who think otherwise." So this study and the actual study, that's the paper that we looked at, they actually showed that people's perceived species richness or biodiversity of birds, butterflies, and plants in an area was positively related to their well-being. So it didn't matter that they didn't know anything about the area. If they thought that area was more biodiverse, it was better for their well-being, which is pretty amazing, right? What was also interesting about this paper was the well-being only really increased with higher levels of bird species richness. So basically what that means is the people who could actually identify enough birds and they knew that they were in an area of higher bird species richness had a better well-being. But for butterflies, there was no correlation. For plants, it was actually a negative correlation. But a lot of this may have to do with the fact that this study also showed this, people just don't know, they don't know anything about biodiversity. They don't know how to, some of them could identify birds, but they couldn't identify plants. They didn't necessarily know that, oh, it looks like there's lots of plants here. Well, actually, it's all one invasive species. So it's not that species rich. And so you can imagine if people perceive a place as being species rich and that helps their well-being, well, what if they know that that place is species rich and it helps with their well-being? So that's where trying to get things like this project that I started on these biodiversity sheets has a real basis in trying to get people connected to the planet, both because that's better for the planet, but it's also better for your own mental health. So we started off with some of these biodiversity sheets, and some of them were with, popular animals like birds. Everybody likes birds. So a backyard bird biodiversity sheet was sort of a no-brainer. And butterflies, everyone's always asking, oh, what butterfly is this? So we had those sheets too. But then we started doing sheets that were a little bit more off the wall. So a caterpillar identification sheet, or a fungi identification sheet, or lichens. Like everyone knows they've seen lichens, but have you ever stopped to look at them and try and identify them? It's pretty amazing. So we did all these different sheets. So the sheets we have a backyard bird sheet, a hawks and owls sheet, a warblers and sparrows sheet, a ducks and wetland bird sheet, a spring migrant sheet. We have an indoor wildlife sheet. So things that would come inside your house. We have a reptiles and amphibians, butterflies, moths, caterpillars, beetles, dragonflies, mammals, fungi. We have a sheet that's all on tree bark, and the other side is the lichens. Woodland wildflowers, field wildflowers. We have a sheet on tree leaves. That sheet we actually now offer in, it's an English, French, and Anishinaabe languages. So it's got 3 different languages on it to try and link that to different programs. Fern sheet, we have animal signs and winter weeds, goldenrod life, pond life, native tree fruits and seeds, the sky and space, spiders. We now have 2 more sheets that focus on new Canadians. So a sheet that one's a winter sheet and one's a summer sheet, and they're designed so that people who are new Canadians or international students can have an idea of what they're looking at. They may not understand that, oh, okay, this is a Canada goose. Well, all right. So and all of these sheets are, they're jumping off points. They are about awareness, because the sheets are just identification stuff. So awareness is not a very deep level for the cognitive learning or affective domain, so the emotional domain. But if you don't make people aware of things, they can't get to a higher level in those domains of internalization or action-oriented activities related to knowing about that group. So it's a jumping off point, and it's an important jumping off point. So all of these mammals on this sheet, for example, you could see in the city of Guelph. And people just don't, people say, oh, well, yeah, I've seen the squirrels. Oh, and a raccoon got in my garbage. But they don't realize that all of this stuff is actually there if you go and look for it. And what's also important is for people to realize that here are all the mammals you're going to look for. Here are the signs that maybe will help you look for them. But look over here. You're actually one of those mammals, because that's something that people think we're separated from nature, but we really aren't. We are a part of this. So trying to get that across to everyone is really important too. So, and you can see the sheets are really important for, we can use these things for just kids going to a pond. They get a bunch of things in the pond, and they can use these sheets to try and figure it out. Now, what I did early on when I was working on these sheets is I actually tried, I did a little experiment. So because, why not? This is a university, I could do an experiment. No one knew I was experimenting on them, which I'm sure I could get in trouble for, but I wasn't collecting the data or anything. So it was just something to see. So I made the pond sheet, and the pond sheet is complicated. And These are preschoolers. So I took a bunch of preschoolers. I used the university preschoolers, so the ones at the daycare and preschool just at the entrance of the Arboretum. And we went out into Wild Goose Woods on the boardwalk and looked for pond invertebrates. So here's what the sheet looks like. These are things that most people are not familiar with. Okay, if you look at all these things, you may go, mosquitoes. I know what mosquitoes are, but have I really seen a mosquito pupa before? So these are things that aren't really familiar in sort of, they're not in the mainstream. So I gave this sheet to preschoolers. So none of them can read. Okay, so these were all 3 and 4-year-olds, and they scooped in the pond and the ephemeral pool. They dumped things into their little basins. And then I went around and I said, okay, what have you got? And these students would say, oh, I have that one and a whole bunch of those ones and that one and that one. And the preschoolers were always right on what they were looking at. Okay. That afternoon, I had a grade 11 high skilled majors class from Centennial come to the Arboretum, and I did the exact same program. So exact same program that I did with the preschoolers, I did with the high school students. And the students went in, they scooped into the pond, they dumped things out into their basins, and I said, okay, what have you got? And they said, well, we have that. And I said, no, you don't have that. Oh, well, it's this. No, you don't have that either. Well, what about no? And so it wasn't until I said to these high school students that the preschoolers didn't get anything wrong during their whole program did they start to go, oh, and because they weren't really looking, whereas the preschoolers were really, really looking at what they saw because they were so like, wow, what's this? But then once the high schoolers sort of realized, oh, like we're being shown up by a bunch of 3 and 4-year-olds, they started really looking, and then they got that connection to the things that were in their basins. So it's a pretty cool sort of thinking of society that if you can get kids young into this type of thing, you may be able to get that spark going earlier, because as you get older, you probably have less of a chance of getting that spark to work. So if you can get a whole bunch of kids and their parents interested in this type of thing, it's a really great project for them. Now, a lot of this stuff is based, it's all sort of sciencey. Not everyone, as we can tell by this pandemic, the lack of knowledge of science is a bad thing, okay? It amazes me what people don't know science-wise. So trying to get them connected to nature, which is all around them, can only make things better, not just for the planet, but for society as a whole. Because people really need to we are part of science, and we need to know that to be able to deal with things like a pandemic from a global social standpoint. But not everyone is as interested in science as, say, I am. So I teach art workshops, and I take people out and teach them how to use watercolors or how to sketch nature. What's really fun about this is they think they're taking an art course, but really I am teaching them a nature course and getting them connected to the planet by using art as a medium. So there's lots of different ways to get people connected. You just have to figure out how to do it. And all of these people are learning all about different plants, things that they didn't notice before because they've stopped and really started focusing on them. So that's a really neat thing about art, like especially painting or drawing. You will always learn something about what you're working on. And that really helps you connect with it and get that sense of place as well. So here are some people showing off their art. And meanwhile, I'm like doing my evil laugh going, I connected you to nature more than you have been before this program. Kids, on the other hand, they're a lot easier to get that eyebrow raise. So you can see the eyebrow raise here. That's what I live for. So I live for trying to have people come to a program and get that sense of awe. And even with a mask on, you can see an eyebrow raise. And my challenge to you, so we're going to end off here with a little bit of homework, okay, is I want you to challenge yourself to not only connect with nature in a way that you haven't before, picking a different group, or a different taxon, or maybe you're really like birds, but you've never really looked at plants, or anything. It doesn't matter. But then I want you to share that with a child. Okay. So everybody, you may not have your own children, but everyone has little brothers or little sisters or nieces or nephews or neighborhood kids that you can connect to the planet, because there's a lot of things stopping them from connecting to the planet. And I'm trying to recruit more people to get them out there. And the biodiversity sheets we have are a comfort zone thing that will help you do that. I do a bunch of teacher training programs, and it's amazing to me, but you can see it. A lot of teachers, especially primary teachers who didn't take science as their sort of majors when they were going through school before they went to teachers college, they are uncomfortable taking students outside into nature because they don't know the answers. And so that's a scary thing. If you don't know the answers, you're going to feel like you're failing your students. And that's why these biodiversity sheets are great, because you can work through identifications with your students. And then once you know that, oh, this is a painted lady butterfly, well, now we can look that up and learn more about it. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do with kids. And how to start is every kid goes through different stages. And so you just have to pick whatever that kid's stage is and work with it. Okay. So the stage could be the dinosaur stage, the bug stage, a pond stage, a leaf stage. It doesn't matter what it is. You just want to get them connected. So I'm going to use my son as an example. So he's now 25, by the way. So he does not look like this anymore. But his first stage was tractors. So I'm like, Mr. Nature guy. And I'm like, oh, my kid is into tractors. Whatever. That's what he's into. Let's get looking at tractors. And so at the age of 2, he could identify any tractor that he saw. Even like things like Ford and New Holland that to me look the same. He could say, oh, Ford, New Holland, Echo Alice. Like you're driving around. So it's sort of developing your brain to see differences and be able to identify things. And then when we got to the dinosaur stage, it was awesome. So he could identify all the dinosaurs on this table to genus by the time he was 4, type thing. Because I was interested, he was interested. We went through an owl stage where he knew all the different owls. He could say what all the different owl sounds were. He taught a high school class all about owls when he was like 4 years old. It's the type of thing that if you don't underestimate a kid, it's amazing what their abilities are, because they've got that sponge brain. We did plants, we did insects. So all these different things are really important. You just have to work with what you have. There's no sense forcing it on anyone. And you need to just guide the discovery. You don't have to do everything, but you could take them to a butterfly conservatory, a pond, put out a bird feeder. And when to start, a lot of people think that, oh, they're too young for that. And that's not fair to the child. Any child who shows an interest in something is at the right age. You just have to make it age appropriate for them. So never underestimate them. Don't be scared to use big words. I did a class. I was teaching I think it was a grade 2 class. It's a grade 1 or grade 2 class. And we were doing an insect class. And so I was teaching the class, and we were teaching the 6-year-olds, we were teaching them holometabolous and hemimetabolous. Okay. So some of you out there, because I can see some of your faces, I saw your face go, like, you don't know what holometabolous and hemimetabolous is. That's cool, because probably no one ever taught you. So we're teaching these 6-year-olds holometabolous and hemimetabolous. Holometabolous is an insect that has a 4-part life cycle. So an egg, a caterpillar, a larva, a pupa or cocoon, and an adult. And a hemimetabolous insect has a 3-parted life cycle, like a dragonfly, where there's an egg, nymph stages, and an adult. Okay, so I'm teaching this class, and we're saying holometabolous and hemimetabolous. And the teacher at the back of the room, she says, excuse me, but those are too big of words for my class. And I thought, oh. So I randomly picked a kid in the class. I said, you, what's your name? My name's Billy. I said, Billy, Tell me all the dinosaurs you know. And Billy went, oh, well, Diplodocus and Brontosaurus, which is actually a Apatosaurus now, Tyrannosaurus and Pachycephalosaurus. And so he just starts rhyming off all these massive names of dinosaurs, which everyone expects kids to know. And the teacher said, okay, touche, go ahead. And you can't shy away from that. Kids love that. And kids love knowing stuff that adults don't know. And you can use that to connect them to nature. It's nothing like a kid going, I said to the kids, so now what are you going to talk about at the kitchen table tonight? And they'd say, I'm going to teach my parents hemimetabolus and holometabolus. And you're like, yeah, good job, go for it. You just have to make it fun. Always make it fun. And I'm going to show a video right now. So this is Ty, he's 4, and he had one of the books that I've written called Hawks and Owls. So I'm going to play this video just to show that if a kid's interested in something, so I don't know Ty, this is something his mother said, we got this book, Ty loves this book, and I want you to see how much he loves this book. Okay, so it's just a short video, so watch this.
Hi, my name is Ty.
How old are you, Ty?
4.
Very good. And what's this book?
Hawks and Owls.
Oh, very good. Oh, can we give you a little quiz?
So Ty can't
You
read,
want to do
by the way.
perching or
okay?
soaring? Perching. All right, let's do it. What's that one?
Naragasak. Richard Hawk. Harrier. Bodigo. Turkey vulture. Osprey. Kestrel. Peregrine.
And one more.
Red-tailed hawk.
All right, let's do a couple perching, okay? Or soaring, okay? Oh, gotta flip the book. Okay, ready? And let's do.
Osprey. Red shoulder. Red tail. Bodigo. Herring. Coop.
And one more.
Kestrel.
Yay, high five. Good job.
Okay, so like, I'm probably accurate in saying that most of you would not be able to identify all of those birds. Now, kids' memories are amazing, right? That kid could just have memorized where everything was and then just pointed at it. But a friend of mine who did Hawk Watch at Grimsby at the Niagara Peninsula Hawk Watch, he said, oh, I hear you've sort of talked to Ty's mom. And I said, oh, do you know Ty? And so this kid at age 4 went to the hawk migration spot where they were doing scientific studies. They were recording all the different hawk species that were flying over. And he said he can do it. Like, he actually was identifying all the different species that flew over the tower at the same time that the birders who have been doing it for years were doing it. So you can't underestimate what a child can do, okay? So you can start anywhere. Nature is all around you. You can use citizen science. You can do guided things like butterfly surveys, dragonfly surveys, Christmas bird counts, biothons, or you can do them on your own. Feeder watch is a great way of connecting kids to nature because you put out a bird feeder and then you just record the birds that come to it. Monarch watch, frog watch, Lost Ladybird Project. There's all kinds of things that you have to compete with. So the internet, it's hard to compete with the internet, but you can use nature apps to connect kids using technology. You can use nature documentaries with TV. Sports is a little bit harder. You can still do it though. I can remember watching my son, who's age 5, playing soccer, and right in the middle of the game, he just yells, "Dad!" And so all the kids on the field stop playing, all the parents in the stand stop talking, the ref stops, and we're all like, what's happening? Is this kid gonna throw up or what's happening? And he looks up and he goes, "Turkey vulture." And yeah, so, you never know when these things are gonna happen if you give a kid a chance to connect with nature. Include friends, try and get your teacher involved, get their teacher so that they can be involved in the interest, and include family too. Like spread the joy of nature with all these people. And to make it work, you have to use personalities to your advantage. So knowing a kid and how it's going to work for them So my family is very competitive. So it was like, okay, who can actually see the first red-winged blackbird at the bird feeder? Okay, so who's going to see it? When we do feeder watch, you record the highest numbers of birds that you see at once. That's how you collect the data. And so, like, I would be in the living room, and in the kitchen, I'd hear my daughter go, yes. And I'm like, what? And she said, I got 14 juncos. You only had 11 juncos. So, you know, you make it competitive. We used to play a game called Punch Raptors. So, you know, Punch Buggy, when you see a Volkswagen Bug and you punch someone. Well, we did Punch Raptors. So if you're driving along the road and you go by a red tail and someone sees it first, they get to punch you and say red tail hawk. But if they identify it wrong, the person you punch gets to hit you back twice. So, you know, you can make it fun any way you want, guessing games. So little mothers or little parents, my daughter mothered everything. So raising caterpillars was her thing. And we ended up writing a book on caterpillars. So you never know what is going to get them interested, whether it's technology, cameras, apps, answering questions. You just want to make it normal, do it every day. You can do those biodiversity sheets. They, you know, this is how big they are. Okay, so they work just like placemats. They could just be sitting there when your kid is eating breakfast, and they will learn stuff while it's just sitting there. Posters in their room, a routine, artifacts, make an artifact table. Anything that you can do to get them to notice stuff and be connected to it is my challenge to you. Is you need to spread this stuff. You need to make it action oriented so that people can connect to the planet the way that you connect to the planet, or the way that is best for them to connect to the planet. All right, so there we are. And yeah, if anyone wants to learn more about the Arboretum, you can come to our website and check it out, or join our newsletter. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So lots of different ways of doing that.